As the story grows, I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome Tom Angelripper from legendary thrash metal band Sodom to the podcast. The new Sodom record, The Arsonist, is out this Friday on Steamhammer Records. Tom talks about working with Steamhammer throughout Sodom's career, the German Big Four and not worrying about Sodom's legacy, finding lyrical inspiration for 40 years, and more. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of As the Story Grows. If this is your first time checking us out, thanks so much for listening. You can find links in our show notes or over at asthestorygrows.com for our podcast community on Discord, our mailing list, and our Patreon page where you can get early access to every episode for $1 a month. And if you like what you hear, I would love if you subscribed to the podcast on your podcast platform of choice. Never miss an episode and potentially discover your next favorite band. Enjoy today's conversation with Tom Angelripper from Sodom.
All right, I think we got 25 minutes, something like this.
Okay. That's fine with me. We'll dive in. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm good. Yes, I have a lot of promo activities around the new album, and yesterday I hold it in my hand, you know.
Oh, nice.
Here it is, yeah.
Nice.
It's always a happy day, you know, when you get the final product in your hands after all the work, you know.
Yeah. Let me ask you, this new record coming out on Steamhammer, it's rare to see a band release every record with the same label. How'd you guys initially get connected with Steamhammer, and what has made that relationship so good to stay with the label all this time?
I think we always work together in a very good way. And we started with SPV at 84 when we signed the first contract, and then we got a break. I think end of the 90s we went to Gun Records and also Drakkar Records, which is the German label, and we coming back in 2000 with the M16 album. You know, I don't know. It's a good company. You know, they gotta spread the album worldwide. You know, and it's a very good relationship after all the decades. You know. Yeah. I never tried to find another company. I don't know, because we work together, and that's fine.
Yeah. If it works, right? I was reading online. Is it true that Obsessed by Cruelty, after the record was pressed, that you ended up scrapping that and remixing the whole record?
That no, it was not just a remix. We just re-recorded the whole album. You know.
Okay.
And I think that worldwide, and I think no band did before. You know, when we recorded the first one in Berlin with the producer Horst Müller, was his name, and then we get the master tape to the record company, and they listened to the sound. You know, I said the sound is so bad, you have to remix it. And Horst told us, so he don't want to make any remix, you know, he don't want to see the band anymore. Because sort of in these times are really hard to work with, you know, we were always chaotic, you know, always drunk, you know, nobody told us to tune the guitars before we recorded an album. You know? We never mind. And then we re-recorded the complete album in Bavaria studio, you know. Yeah. Which I think the sound is better on the first one, in my opinion. You know? So we have 2 records out from this album. And I remember they're going to send the wrong master tape for the US American press, for Metal Blade, you know.
Oh, man.
And they pressed the first one. It's very confusing. But nowadays I'm working on a complete Obsessed by Cruelty story, because we want to make a re-release of this album. Because the complete back catalog went from SPV to BMG. And we start doing remixes, and we start refreshing the whole back catalog.
Technological satisfaction.
through that experience, outside of just like maybe the general stuff of having tuned guitars and whatnot, were there things you took from that experience that influenced the sound that would become Persecution Mania? Because both sonically and as musicians and songwriters, that album is like heads and shoulders better.
I don't know. I think there was a completely new guitarist. We got Frank Blackfire on the guitars. And I think the most reason why we changed the music, we changed the lyrics, everything, Yeah. But the main reason that Persecution Mania and also Express of Sodom, the first single before, was completely different to Obsessed by Cruelty. That we got a producer, we got somebody by our hands who gonna help us recording an album, recording instruments, and that was Harris Jones, and this time Harris was like a fourth band member, and he told us, don't drink so much, take your time when recording your bass or guitar, whatever, So in the end, it's a really good album, Yeah. You cannot compare it to Obsessed by Cruelty anymore. But I know Obsessed by Cruelty had a big impact onto the black metal scene in Scandinavia and everywhere, And still nowadays, some people told me Obsessed by Cruelty is the best album we ever recorded, And I remember, and the guy who painted this cover, for example, he told me Obsessed by Cruelty is the best album ever, the holy grail of every black metal album, Because Sodom was in the second wave of black metal. The first one was the Venom started with, and Bathory was the second one, I don't know. But I like this album, And people are waiting for repressing Obsessed by Cruelty.
Wow.
Because if you want to buy an original first press, you pay the price, and you pay 800 euros, maybe more sometimes, if you get it in a good condition.
Yeah. This new album is called The Arsonist. You guys have been going on for 4 decades now as a band. What keeps you inspired to keep going, to keep writing?
The money. No, we are just metal fans making music, And if you like listening to the music, you want to play. You want to make your own music, And this something never changed since all the decades, And I think Sodom is a bit we never really change, We try to get better sound, we try to write better songs, But in the end, Sodom is the most famous underground band in the world, Mm-hmm. We don't have too much commercial influences, We have no, when we start writing the songs, nobody told us what to do, There is no dictation from a record company, whatever, going to tell us we have to change the music, we have to change this to sell more copies, You remember that in the 90s, a lot of thrash bands or metal bands changed and tried to get more commercial because the music scene changed, We never mind, In these times, we recorded Get What You Deserve, Tapping the Vein, Masquerade in Blood, which were the heaviest solo albums ever,
Yeah.
So I never mind. We just want to do the music we like to do, we like listen to, We got to get in the rehearsal room and arranging the songs together and making our music. And in the end, we get a master and we give it to the record company. They're going to release it or not,
Yeah. There's a quote from you or attributed to you that says, "Why are we writing about war? Because we don't want war. We want to describe how bad war is." Do you kind of look around at the world and, 40 years of doing this band that you're still having to maybe write about the same shit you were 20, 30 years ago?
Yes, it's a shame. It's a shame, that I always write about the war, because all the time when we write Better of Dead or other, there was Yugoslavia war was growing up, but I never want to write about the big war, I don't want to write about the politics behind the big war, I'm always interested in a soldier who's fighting in the war,
Yeah.
There is a couple of songs like, for example, Tempophobia, which means when a soldier in World War I, especially, fighting on the front line in trenches, and grenades exploding next to him, he was scared to get buried with all the shit coming down,
Yeah.
So he would get buried alive, These are a soldier fighting in the Vietnam War jungle, I don't want to tell the people who's a good guy or a bad guy, you know. Some people ask me the Arsonist on the cover, which is this guy. Is it President Putin or is it President Trump? Whatever, you know. I don't know. Yeah. This is just fantasy, you know. But the cover describes the world situation because you see a very peaceful atmosphere, you know, with the soldier on the knees, you know, the dead man, and this one, the Knarrenheinz, what we say in Germany, destroyed, set the world on fire completely, you know.
Yeah.
But there is no politics behind. I'm interested in politics, you know, but I don't want to write this in my lyrics, you know, because I have to write song lyrics. You know? But, you know, when I look TV news or newspaper articles, you know, I'm really scared, but I'm not scared of myself. I'm scared of the new generation growing up in this world, you know.
Yeah.
And I cannot change anything, you know. I just can go up on stage and scream it out, you know. The message is really simple. We want to live in a peaceful world and stop the shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you've been doing this for so long, has there ever been a record or a point where you go to write and you're just like, oh, I don't know what to say this time, or like you've run out of ideas?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You know, I always have ideas for writing lyrics, you know, and you know, even when we have a new album out, you know, I start writing the next lyrics, you know. I try to get inspiration from the real life, you know, and what happened in the world, you know. But on this album especially, there is not only things about war, you know. I get songs. There was a tribute song to my ex-drummer Chris Witchhunter, you know. There was a song about my favorite musician. It's Angelripper from Tank from the 80s, you know. There is everything behind, you know. And also, when we come to the songwriting, you know, our drummer Tony is also a very good guitarist, and he's a good songwriter. I think he put 4 or 5 songs to the new album, and it's completely different when you compare it to Blackfire's guitar riffing. It's more old school, traditional Agent Orange style, you know. And York is coming from the epic metal scene, you know, and he came up with completely different guitar riffs, you know. And Tony, somebody's coming from the death metal, black metal scene.
Yeah. And
that's what you hear, you know, very fast songs, very brutal guitar riffs, whatever. And we're putting everything together, but important is that we keep the typical Sodom trademarks in every song, you know, which is my vocals and the bass sound and everything, you know. But we are still creative, you know. We don't want to copy ourselves, you know, but we want to make a new album, but keep the trademarks in it, you know. And we don't want to leave any Sodom fans disappointed when they get a new album on.
There are so many bands that started in the 80s from the thrash death metal scene, still kicking, still going all these years later. Is there something about that generation of bands that has led to the longevity? Or maybe is there something about, you know, the European bands that have led you guys to exist longer?
I think there were a lot of bands who started in 80, 82. That was a time period, you know. A couple of bands are still around, like Darkness. You know? Yeah. They came from my era. Other bands like Creator still alive, very big, you know. But from this Ruhr Valley, I told them that the people where we live in Essen, Dortmund, you know, there were just 2 or 3 bands. It's Sodom, Creator, and Darkness still alive. You know.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, that is a result of hardworking men. You know, if you, in this moment, when we signed the record contract in 84, we start being a professional band, you know. And we never mind, you know, but we have to sign the contracts, and we have to do this, you know. We have to recording albums, making concerts, you know. But I think Sodom, especially Sodom and Creator, they created an own style of music. And you cannot compare Sodom to any other bands, you know. And that is the most important, that the band is still alive, you know. We never sounded like Motorhead or like Venom or other bands, you know. That is very important. If you're going to form an own band, try to find a singer with an own style, you know. try to create something new. And after 42 years, I think Sodom is getting a cult band more and more, And also the new generation of metal fans growing up, and I always talk to younger fans, I remember there was a last concert, there was a little girl, she was 10 years old, and she was wearing patches with Venom, Hellhammer, and all Celtic Frost and all the stuff, And she told me, I just like the 80 band coming from the 80s,
Yeah.
I don't like Arch Enemy and the new metalcore bands, so-called metalcore bands, So that hopes that this music will die, that we always growing up a new generation that is really interested in the older bands.
As you've entered your fourth decade as a band, have you thought about like the legacy of Sodom and kind of the thrash metal scene and being part of, the big four in Germany?
I don't think so. I don't think about that. I think there is a legacy, and we always talk about the big four,
Yeah.
Making touring, whatever. I don't know. I think Sodom we always want to do our own things,
Yeah.
We played a couple of shows with the big four in Germany, That was fine to do. That was funny to do, But in the end, Sodom, we can go on tour. We've been in the US America for a couple of shows. These were completely sold out in a very short time,
Yeah.
That is not the thing. Sodom is always a rarity in US America, especially, And when we go playing there, it's sold out, People, we got always offers, and people ask me what is about the big four. But I can tell you, what I'm gonna do is I want to slow down the things a little bit from nowadays. We have 2 upcoming shows in Copenhagen and 2 other Scott Rock Hearts in Germany, and then it's gone from me.
Yeah.
I don't think about big four. I don't think about touring anymore. I don't know. I don't have plans to come back. No plans. Because I don't want to set myself under pressure when I tell the people I'm coming back next year or 2027, whatever, So this big four idea is, for me now, it's gone,
Yeah. Yeah. You just want to keep it about the music and, still be inspired and have fun. Yeah.
Maybe maybe there will be a comeback. We can talk about everything.
Yeah.
I'm still in contact with Schmier and from Destruction Miller, they're all still my friends,
Yeah.
And I talked to Schmier, I want to make a cut now, so let's talk in the next time, but I don't have any plans.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you pay attention to the changing of the industry over the years, especially as things have gone so much online and streaming and YouTube? Or are you just like, metal is metal and we're going to keep releasing albums and that's our focus?
That changed a lot of things, in my opinion. It's also I think the digger stuff. We recorded the album, the drums on a tape machine. And I want to have a kind of a wide open production from the 80s. Like bands from the 80s. I like the old Venom, Mercury. They always have a big drum sound.
Yeah.
We recorded this on tape, but in the end, and that is a shame. Our engineer told me we have to compress the whole file for the digital stuff like Spotify, MP3s,
Yeah.
or people listen to music on a smartphone.
Yeah.
So if you don't compress the file, you never hear the guitars because the guitars are wide open on the other sides, and not in the center of the recording, That's the way it is, But what can I do, But when we're recording an album and producing an album, I always keep it in an old school way,
Yeah.
And we recorded in a studio with a big mixing desk, and the tape machine, That was crazy to do, And we still rehearse in the rehearsal room, But in the end, when I give the master to the record company, they do what they have to do,
Yeah.
And it's Spotify and all the download portals around, and so that is a shame, because we have a really good production. And if you get the vinyl version is more wide open,
Yeah.
But I never listen to music on a smartphone,
Yeah.
But that's the way it is now. When I listen to metal, I take my vinyls out, I have my stereo, hi-fi equipment, with good speakers, and then I want to enjoy the music, I don't just want to consume. I want to enjoy the music I listen to.
Yeah.
But this is the way it is nowadays. You know? I am this old man, you know. But I have to accept this, you know.